Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Silence. Nathan Carey had always been good at reading rooms. 8 years as a pharmaceutical research analyst had taught him to spot the smallest shifts in body language, the micro-expressions that revealed what people were really thinking. So when Dr. Elizabeth Gilmore froze during the ultrasound, her practiced smile evaporating like morning dew, he knew something was catastrophically wrong. The examination room at St. Catherine's Medical Center had been filled with nervous excitement moments before. Nathan held his wife Carol's hand. Carol Patterson Carey, the woman he'd loved since they met at a medical ethics conference 5 years ago. She was a medical ethics consultant, brilliant and compassionate, with auburn hair and eyes that could see through any deception except, apparently, the one growing inside her. "There's the heartbeat," Dr. Gilmore had said initially, her tone routine and reassuring. Then she leaned closer to the monitor, her brow furrowing. She adjusted the ultrasound wand, pressed harder against Carol's swollen belly. The rhythmic whooshing of the heartbeat continued, but something in the image had changed the doctor's demeanor entirely. "What is it?" Carol asked, her voice tight with fear. "Is the baby okay?" Dr. Gilmore didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned off the monitor with a deliberate click, removing the wand and setting it aside with trembling hands. She wouldn't meet their eyes. "I need you to go to the hospital's special imaging department right now," she said, her professional mask cracking. "4th floor, radiology wing. Ask for Dr. Simon Key. He's expecting unusual cases today." "What did you see?" Nathan demanded, standing up. He was 6'2", broad-shouldered from years of college football and daily gym sessions. But in that moment, he felt powerless. "Doctor, what's wrong with our baby?" Dr. Gilmore finally looked at him, and what Nathan saw in her eyes made his blood run cold. It wasn't just concern. It was pity mixed with something else. Fear. "It wasn't a fetus for sure," she whispered. I've never seen anything like it in 20 years of practice. The structure is all wrong. There's something else there, something that shouldn't be possible." Carol let out a strangled sob. Nathan pulled her close, his mind racing through possibilities. Genetic abnormality? Tumor? Some kind of medical anomaly? But the doctor's reaction suggested something beyond the usual complications. "We're going right now," Nathan said, helping Carol sit up. "But I need you to tell me, is my wife in danger?" Dr. Gilmore hesitated. "I don't know. That's why you need to see Dr. Key immediately. He specializes in unusual cases." 20 minutes later, they were in a different examination room with state-of-the-art imaging equipment. Dr. Simon Key was a thin, nervous man in his 50s with graying hair and hands that never stopped moving. He performed a more detailed ultrasound, then brought up the images on a large monitor. "Mr. and Mrs. Carey," he began, his voice carefully neutral, "your wife is not pregnant." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "That's impossible," Carol said. "I took 4 tests. I have all the symptoms. My belly is distended, yes, but not from a pregnancy." Dr. Key pulled up a series of images. "What you're carrying is a mass. A highly unusual mass that's somehow mimicking pregnancy hormones, creating false positives on standard tests. But it's not biological in origin, at least not entirely." Nathan stared at the screen. The shape was wrong, alien. It looked almost artificial. "What the hell is that?" he asked. Dr. Key's expression darkened. "That's what we need to find out. But Mr. Carey, I have to ask you something, and I need complete honesty. Has your wife been exposed to any experimental drugs or treatments recently? Anything unusual?" Nathan's mind went blank. Then, like a key turning in a lock, a memory surfaced. 3 months ago, Carol had participated in a clinical trial for prenatal vitamins. She'd been so excited about contributing to medical research. The trial had been run by. His blood turned to ice. "Quantum Biosystems," he said slowly. She was in a vitamin trial run by Quantum Biosystems. Dr. Key and his assistant exchanged a look that confirmed Nathan's worst fears. "Mr. Carey," the doctor said carefully, "Quantum Biosystems isn't registered with any legitimate medical research board. We've been tracking reports of their trials for months. Whatever they gave your wife, it wasn't vitamins. Chapter 2. The Ghost of Betrayal. Nathan didn't sleep that night. While Carol rested under sedation at the hospital, he sat in his home office surrounded by 3 monitors, diving deep into quantum biosystems. What he found made him wish he'd trusted his instincts years ago. The company had been founded 18 months ago by Rodolfo Black, a name that sent Nathan's heart into his throat. Rodolfo, Rod to his friends, which Nathan had once been. They'd worked together at Meridian Pharmaceuticals 6 years ago, both brilliant researchers with promising futures. Then came the incident that changed everything. Nathan had discovered that Rod was falsifying data in clinical trials, manipulating results to make a failed drug appear successful. The drug was meant to treat postpartum depression, but Rod's falsified data hid dangerous side effects. When Nathan reported him to the FDA, Rod's career imploded. He was fired, blacklisted, and faced criminal charges that were eventually dropped on technicalities. "I'll make you pay for this, Carrie," Rod had screamed during their last confrontation. "You destroyed my life over your precious ethics. One day, I'll destroy something you love." Nathan had dismissed it as the rant of a desperate man. He moved on, met Carol, built a good life. He'd almost forgotten about Rodolfo Black. But Rod hadn't forgotten. At 3 a.m., Nathan's phone buzzed. An unknown number. He answered. "Hello, Nathan." The voice was smooth, cultured, dripping with satisfaction. "I've been waiting for this call." "Rod." Nathan's voice was flat, controlled. "What did you do to my wife? What you did to me? I took away her future. Carol wanted children so badly, didn't she? I made sure that will never happen now. The compound we gave her, it's quite elegant, really. Experimental nanotechnology combined with synthetic biology. It's creating a structure in her womb that will require complete removal of her reproductive system. She'll survive, but she'll never carry a child." Nathan's hand tightened on the phone. "Why, Carol? She never did anything to you. Because you love her. Because I wanted you to feel what I felt. The destruction of everything you'd planned, everything you dreamed about. My career, my future family, my reputation, you took it all. Now we're even. We're not even close to even," Nathan said quietly. "But we will be." Rod laughed. "What are you going to do? Report me again?" Quantum Biosystems is a shell company registered in 3 different countries. By the time anyone traces it, I'll be gone. And Carol? She signed all the waivers. Legally, she consented to experimental treatment. "You're right," Nathan said. "Legal channels won't work. So I guess I'll have to get creative." "Is that a threat?" Rod's voice held a hint of uncertainty. "It's a promise. You should have killed me, Rod. Because now I'm coming for you, and I won't stop until you've lost everything." Nathan hung up. His hand was steady as he opened a locked drawer in his desk and pulled out a burner phone. He had resources Rod didn't know about, friendships forged in the darker corners of the pharmaceutical industry, people who operated outside the law when the law failed. He made 3 calls. By dawn, he had a plan. Chapter 3. The Alliance. Carol woke the next morning to find Nathan sitting beside her hospital bed, looking like he hadn't slept, but radiating a cold determination she'd never seen before. "Tell me about Rodolfo Black," she said quietly. Nathan didn't ask how she knew. Carol was brilliant. Of course she'd figured it out. He told her everything, his history with Rod, the phone call, the revenge that had been 6 years in the making. "He did this to me because of you," Carol said. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement of fact. Yes, they were going to make him pay. Together. Nathan looked at his wife with renewed admiration. Where others might have blamed him, Carol saw the real enemy. It was why he loved her. "The surgery is scheduled for tomorrow," Nathan said. "Dr. Key says he can remove the mass, but the damage to your reproductive system is extensive. The nanotechnology has integrated with the tissue in ways they've never seen before." Carol's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. "Then Rod took something from both of us. What's the plan?" Before Nathan could answer, there was a knock on the door. A woman in her 60s entered, elegant, silver-haired, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She wore an expensive suit and carried herself with authority. "Nathan Carey?" she asked. "I'm Rosemary Lawson. I believe you've been looking for me." Nathan stood. Rosemary Lawson was a legend in pharmaceutical circles, a former FDA director who'd been forced out after exposing corruption at the highest levels. She now ran a private investigation firm specializing in medical fraud. How did you? Dr. Key contacted me last night. When he saw Quantum Biosystems' name, he knew I'd want to know. Rosemary sat down uninvited, pulling out a tablet. I've been tracking Rodolfo Black for 18 months. He's not working alone. She showed them files, photographs, financial records. Rod had partnered with two others, Anthony Delaney, a disgraced surgeon who'd lost his license for performing unauthorized experiments, and Sherry Harrington, a venture capitalist with a history of funding ethically questionable research. They're running 6 different shell companies, Rosemary explained. Quantum Biosystems is just one. They target people, specific individuals they want to hurt, and use them as test subject for experimental technology. Carol isn't their first victim. There are at least 12 others we know of. Why target specific people? Carol asked. That seems inefficient. Because it's not really about the research, Rosemary said. It's about revenge and profit. They choose victims connected to people who've wronged them, then sell the technology to the highest bidder. The suffering is just a bonus. Nathan felt his anger crystallize into something colder, sharper. You want to take them down legally. I want them in prison, Rosemary corrected. But the evidence is scattered across multiple jurisdictions. It would take years to build a case that would stick. Years your wife doesn't have, and years those other victims don't have. So what are you proposing? Rosemary smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. I'm proposing we give Rod and his partners exactly what they deserve. But it needs to be surgical, precise, and permanent. Are you in? Nathan looked at Carol. She nodded. I'm in, Nathan said. But I need to know, why are you helping us? Rosemary's smile faded. Because Rodolfo Black killed my daughter. She was one of his test subjects 3 years ago, before I even knew he existed. By the time I found out, she was dead, and Rod had disappeared. I've been hunting him ever since. The room fell silent. Then Carol spoke. What's the plan? Rosemary opened a new file. First, we need to understand their operation inside and out. Nathan, you're going to do something Rod won't expect. You're going to apply for a job at Quantum Biosystems. Chapter 4. Into the Viper's Nest. Nathan's credentials were impeccable. PhD in pharmaceutical research, 8 years at Meridian, published papers in prestigious journals. When he applied to Quantum Biosystems as a senior researcher, using a carefully crafted resume that omitted his history with Rod, the response came within 24 hours. They wanted him. The Quantum Biosystems facility was a sleek, modern building in a tech park outside the city. Nathan walked through the lobby, his hidden camera disguised as a tie clip recording everything. Rosemary and her team were monitoring from a van 3 blocks away. The interview was conducted by Anthony Delaney himself. The surgeon was in his late 50s, with cold eyes and hands that never stopped moving, a habit Nathan recognized from working with surgeons. Delaney was nervous, despite his professional demeanor. Your resume is impressive, Mr. Carey, Delaney said. But I have to ask, why leave a stable position for a startup? Nathan had prepared for this. Because stable is boring. I've spent years following protocols and regulations. I want to push boundaries, work on cutting-edge research without bureaucratic interference. Delaney's eyes lit up. You're not concerned about ethical considerations? Ethics are important, Nathan said carefully, but they shouldn't prevent progress. Sometimes you have to take risks to achieve breakthroughs. It was exactly what they wanted to hear. By the end of the interview, Nathan had a job offer and a tour of the facility scheduled for the next day. That night, he met with Rosemary and her team. She'd brought in 2 specialists, Henry Cooley, a former NSA hacker who now worked private security, and Jamie Bond, an investigative journalist who'd been building a case against Quantum Biosystems for months. The facility has 3 levels, Rosemary explained, showing blueprints on her screen. Public research labs on the first floor, private labs on the second, and something they call special projects in the basement. That's where they keep the real work. How do I get access? Nathan asked. Henry looked up from his laptop. You don't. Not first. but I can get us access remotely. During your tour tomorrow, you'll plant 3 devices, signal boosters that will let me hack their network. Once I'm in, we'll own their data. What about physical evidence? Jamie asked. We need samples, documentation, proof that will stand up in court. That comes later, Rosemary said. First, we map their operation. Then we dismantle it piece by piece. Carol appeared in the doorway. She'd been released from the hospital that morning, post-surgery. The doctors had confirmed what they'd feared. Her reproductive system was destroyed. She would never have biological children. But instead of grief, her face showed only determination. I want in, she said. I'm a medical ethics consultant. I can apply as a compliance officer. They'd never suspect. Too dangerous, Nathan said immediately. Rod took my future, Carol shot back. I deserve to be part of taking his. Rosemary nodded. She's right. And she's qualified. It might actually work. Over the next week, Nathan and Carol infiltrated Quantum Biosystems. Nathan planted Henry's devices and began earning trust with small breakthroughs in his assigned projects. Carol, hired as a compliance consultant, gained access to administrative files and HR records. What they found was worse than they'd imagined. Chapter 5. The True Horror. The basement level of Quantum Biosystems was divided into 12 rooms. Each room contained a subject, people who'd been carefully selected and recruited through fake clinical trials, just like Carol. But unlike Carol, these subjects didn't know they were victims until it was too late. Nathan watched the surveillance footage Henry had hacked, his stomach turning. Room 3 held a woman in her 30s, her body riddled with experimental nanobots that were supposed to cure cancer, but instead were eating her alive slowly. Room 7 contained a man whose nervous system had been hijacked by neural implants, leaving him in constant agony. This is a torture chamber, Carol whispered, watching over Nathan's shoulder. They're not even pretending to do research anymore. Jamie was documenting everything, her camera recording the evidence. We have enough to shut them down, she said. We call the FBI, the FDA, everyone. This ends now. Not yet, Nathan said coldly. Rod, Delaney, and Harrington aren't here. They're at an investor presentation in New York. If we move now, they'll run. We need them all in one place. And we need to free these people, Carol added. They're dying. Rosemary made a decision. Henry, can you disable the security systems in the basement without triggering alarms? Give me 2 hours. Do it. Jamie, contact your medical sources. We need ambulances and trauma teams on standby. Nathan, Carol, you're going to walk out of that building like nothing's wrong. If Rod suspects anything, he'll disappear and we'll never find him. What about the victims? Nathan asked. We're getting them out tonight. But Rod and his partners? They're mine. At midnight, 12 ambulances converged on Quantum Biosystems. Henry had disabled security, and Rosemary's team moved through the basement like ghosts, evacuating the victims. By the time the police arrived, tipped off by an anonymous call, the building was empty except for damning evidence spread across every surface. But there was a problem. As Nathan watched the news coverage the next morning, he realized something was wrong. The story was being suppressed. The victims had been taken to hospitals, but their identities were being hidden. The police investigation was moving slowly, bureaucratically. Someone with power was protecting Quantum Biosystems. His phone rang. Rod. Very clever, Nathan. But you forgot something. Sherry Harrington has friends in very high places. This investigation will die quietly, and we'll rebuild somewhere else. You've won a battle, but the war? You've already lost. Nathan smiled. You're wrong, Rod. I didn't forget anything. I counted on it. What? You think you're the only one with connections? While you were busy protecting yourself legally, I was building a different kind of case. Check your email. There was a pause. Then Rod's breathing changed. Nathan had sent him a video, footage of Rod personally administering the compound to Carol during her clinical trial, clearly explaining on camera what it would do. In Rod's arrogance, he'd recorded his revenge to watch later. But Nathan had found the footage on the hack servers. That's just the start, Nathan continued. In 30 minutes, that video goes to every major news network, every medical board, and every federal agency. Along with evidence of your offshore accounts, your other victims, and detailed documentation of every crime you've committed. Sherry's friends won't be able to stop what's coming. You bastard. No, Rod. I'm the man you tried to destroy and failed. Now it's my turn. Chapter 6. The Unraveling. The media storm was spectacular. Within hours, Rodolfo Black's face was on every news channel. The FDA launched an emergency investigation. The FBI raided 4 different quantum biosystems facilities. And Sherry Harrington, seeing the writing on the wall, turned state's evidence against her partners in exchange for a reduced sentence. But Nathan wasn't satisfied. Legal punishment wasn't enough. Not after what Rod had done to Carol, to Rosemary's daughter, to all those victims. He wanted Rod to feel the same helplessness, the same despair. That's when Rosemary revealed her final card. "There's someone you need to meet," she said, leading Nathan and Carol to a secure location. Someone who's been waiting for this moment. In a private medical facility, they met Dr. Simon Key again. But this time, he wasn't alone. He was with a young woman in her 20s, Janelle Farley, a bioengineering prodigy who'd worked for Rod before discovering what he was really doing. "I helped create the compound that hurt your wife," Janelle said quietly. "I didn't know what it was for. Rod told me it was for fertility treatment. When I found out the truth, I tried to leave, but Rod threatened my family. So I stayed and I learned everything about his work." "Why are you here?" Nathan asked. Janelle looked up, and he saw determination in her eyes that matched his own. "Because I know how to reverse the damage. Not all of it. I can't give Mrs. Carey her reproductive system back. But I can neutralize the nanotechnology in her body and the bodies of the other victims. I can give them their lives back." Carol gasped. "You can cure them?" "The technology is reversible." Rod knew that, but he never planned to use the reversal protocol. "I've been working on it in secret for months. With Dr. Key's help, we can start treatments immediately." "What do you need?" Nathan asked. "Access to Rod's research files. The complete data set is encrypted, and only he has the key." Nathan smiled grimly. "Then I guess we need to have another conversation with Rod." Chapter 7. The Trap. Rodolfo Black was in hiding, but Nathan knew him well enough to predict his moves. Rod was arrogant, convinced of his own brilliance. He wouldn't run far. He'd stay close enough to watch Nathan suffer, to see if his revenge would stick even as his empire crumbled. Nathan leaked a false story to the press. Carol's condition was worsening, and doctors had given her weeks to live. It was bait, and Rod took it. The message came through an encrypted channel. "The Carlisle Hotel, room 1407, midnight. Come alone. I'll give you the reversal code for Carol. Last chance at mercy." It was obviously a trap. Nathan went anyway. The Carlisle was a luxury hotel downtown, the kind of place where money bought privacy and discretion. Nathan entered through the lobby, noting the security cameras, the exit routes, the positions of hotel staff. Rosemary's team was scattered throughout the building. Henry in the security office, Jamie posing as a hotel guest, armed operatives in the stairwells. Room 1407 was on the 14th floor. Nathan knocked once. Rod opened the door. He looked haggard, years older than the last time they'd met. But his eyes held the same cruel intelligence. "Nathan." Right on time. Rod stepped aside, gesturing him in. The room was a suite, expensively furnished. Anthony Delaney sat on the couch, a gun resting on the cushion beside him. They'd clearly expected this to go differently. "Where's Harrington?" Nathan asked. "Cutting a deal," the coward, Rod said. "But it doesn't matter. She doesn't have what you need. Only I do. The reversal code." "Exactly." Rod poured himself a drink. "Here's my offer. I give you the code, and you drop all charges, retract your testimony, and disappear. Carol lives, and I rebuild somewhere else. Everyone wins, except the other victims." Rod shrugged. "Collateral damage. That's not your problem." Nathan pretended to consider it. "And if I refuse?" Delaney picked up the gun. "Then we kill you here, dump your body, and Carol dies slowly." "I'm a surgeon, Nathan. I know exactly how long she has." "You're bluffing. Killing me doesn't get you out of federal prison." "No," Rod agreed. "But it satisfies me. After what you did to my life, watching you die would be worth it." Nathan looked between them. Two desperate men with nothing left to lose. Dangerous, but predictable. There's a third option, Nathan said calmly, which is, you give me the code, and I don't send the signal. Rod frowned. What signal? Nathan pulled out his phone, showing them a simple app with a single red button. 3 minutes ago, when I walked into this room, I armed a device. It's in this building, close enough that if it detonates, this entire floor goes up. The button on my phone is a dead man switch. If my heart rate stops, or if I press this button, boom, we all die. Delaney stood up, pointing the gun at Nathan's head. You're bluffing. Am I? You know my background, Rod. You know I worked in chemical synthesis before switching to pharmacology. You know I have the knowledge and connections to build something like this. Are you willing to bet your life that I wouldn't? Rod's face went pale. You'd kill yourself just to take us down? After what you did to Carol? In a heartbeat. Nathan's voice was cold, final. Give me the code, Rod, or we all die in the next 60 seconds. The standoff lasted 20 seconds. Then Rod broke. Jesus Christ, fine. He grabbed a laptop, fingers flying over the keyboard. The encryption key is a 36-character sequence. I'm sending it to your phone now. Nathan's phone buzzed. He checked the message. It looked legitimate. How do I know this is real? Nathan asked. Because I don't want to die, Rod said bitterly. You win, Nathan. You always win. Take your code and get out. Nathan backed toward the door, phone still visible. You should know there is no bomb. But there are FBI agents surrounding this building, and this entire conversation has been recorded and transmitted to federal prosecutors. Rod's face went from pale to purple. You bastard. The door burst open. FBI agents flooded in, weapons drawn. Delaney tried to raise his gun and was tackled to the ground. Rod just stood there, defeated, as they cuffed him. You can't do this, Rod whispered as they led him past Nathan. After everything, this isn't justice. This is revenge. You're right, Nathan said quietly. It's both. Chapter 8. The Reversal. The encryption key was real. Within hours, Janelle and Dr. Key had accessed Rod's complete research database. The reversal protocol was there, along with detailed documentation of every experiment, every victim, every crime. Over the next 3 weeks, 12 people received treatment. The nanotechnology was neutralized, their bodies beginning the slow process of healing. Some of the damage was permanent, but they were alive, and they were free. Carol underwent the procedure on a Tuesday morning. Nathan held her hand as Janelle administered the reversal compound, a silver liquid that looked innocent but contained the cure Rod had never intended to use. How do you feel? Nathan asked when it was done. Lighter, Carol said, like something poisonous has been removed. She paused. I'll never have children. That doesn't change. I know, but we can adopt. We can foster. We can build a family in other ways. Nathan kissed her forehead. We can. Rosemary visited them that evening. She looked different, softer, somehow. The hunt that had consumed her for 3 years was over. The trial starts in 6 months, she said. Rod, Delaney, and Harrington are all being charged with assault, attempted murder, medical fraud, and about 40 other counts. The prosecutors say it's the strongest case they've seen in years. What about the other companies? Nathan asked. The shell corporations? Being dismantled? The FDA is conducting a global investigation into experimental medical trials. Your testimony has changed the entire industry. After Rosemary left, Carol turned to Nathan. It's really over, isn't it? Almost. What else is there? Nathan pulled out a folder. Inside were documents, photographs, financial records. Rod's assets. The courts are seizing them to pay restitution to the victims. But there's something else. He had a foundation, the Black Research Fund. It was supposed to fund legitimate medical research, but he never funded anything. Just kept the money. And I'm proposing we take it over. Rename it the Lawson Carey Foundation after Rosemary's daughter and us. Use it to fund ethical research, support victims of medical fraud, and prevent anyone else from going through what we did. Carol smiled through tears. Rod would hate that. Exactly. Chapter 9, New Beginnings. The trial of Rodolfo Black became a media sensation. Nathan testified for 6 hours, laying out the entire conspiracy with the precision of a scientist and the passion of a victim. Carol testified about her experience, her lost future, and her determination to ensure no one else suffered the same fate. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Rod received 35 years in federal prison. Delaney got 20. Harrington, who'd cooperated, got 8 years and permanent exile from the medical industry. As they led Rod away in chains, he looked at Nathan one last time. Was it worth it? Rod asked. All this just for revenge? Nathan thought about Carol, about the 12 victims who were healing, about Rosemary, who'd finally found peace, about the foundation that would help thousands more. It wasn't revenge, Nathan said. It was justice. You never understood the difference. 6 months later, the Loss and Carry Foundation opened its doors. Nathan left his position at Meridian to run it full-time, with Carol as the director of ethics oversight. They funded research into reversing experimental medical damage, supported victims of medical fraud, and lobbied for stronger protections in clinical trials. Rosemary joined as an advisor, using her experience to prevent others from suffering as her daughter had. Janelle became their lead researcher, her brilliant mind now focused on healing rather than harm. Dr. Key and Henry both joined the team, along with Jamie, who documented everything and ensured transparency. On the Foundation's 1-year anniversary, Nathan stood in front of a crowd of supporters, donors, and former victims. Carol stood beside him, strong and radiant. A year ago, my wife and I faced the darkest moment of our lives, Nathan began. We were victims of a man's revenge, caught in a conspiracy that nearly destroyed us. But we survived, and more importantly, we made sure that others would survive too. He gestured to the 12 former victims, now healthy and rebuilding their lives. These people are the reason we fight. Not for revenge, not for punishment, but for protection. For justice. For the simple idea that no one should suffer because of another person's cruelty. The crowd applauded. Carol squeezed his hand. That night, alone in their apartment, Nathan and Carol sat on their balcony, watching the city lights. Do you ever think about what we lost? Carol asked quietly. Every day, Nathan admitted. But I also think about what we built. The foundation will help thousands of people. That's a legacy worth having. Rod took our chance at biological children. But in a way, we have hundreds of children now, everyone the foundation helps. Nathan pulled her close. We could still adopt, Start our own family, separate from all this. Carol smiled. I'd like that. 3 years later, they adopted twins, a boy and a girl, age 5, who'd been orphaned in a medical malpractice case the foundation had helped resolve. Nathan and Carol named them Hope and Justice, because that's what they represented. Rod remained in prison, his legacy one of cruelty and failure. His name became synonymous with medical fraud, used as a cautionary tale in medical schools worldwide. Nathan's name became synonymous with ethical advocacy and justice. He testified before Congress, helped pass new legislation protecting clinical trial participants, and became a voice for victims everywhere. But his greatest achievement wasn't public recognition or legislative change. It was the quiet moments at home with Carol and their children, building the family Rod had tried to destroy. It was knowing that every day, the foundation helped someone escape the kind of nightmare they'd endured. On the 5th anniversary of Carol's rescue from Quantum Biosystems, Nathan received a letter. It was from one of the victims, a woman named Lauren Ferguson who'd been in room 3 of the basement, dying from experimental nanobots. Dear Mr. Carey, the letter read, I wanted you to know that I got married last week. 5 years ago, I was dying in a nightmare, convinced I'd never see another sunrise. Because of you and your wife, I'm alive. I'm happy. I have a future. You didn't just save my life, you gave it back to me. Thank you. Nathan showed the letter to Carol. She read it, tears streaming down her face. This, she said softly, this is why we fought. Not to destroy Rod, but to save people like Lauren. Rod wanted to take everything from us, Nathan said. Instead, we built something beautiful from the ashes. That's the best revenge, proving that his cruelty couldn't break us. Carol kissed him. Not revenge. Justice. Justice, Nathan agreed. Outside, their children played in the yard, their laughter echoing through the evening air. Inside, the walls were covered with photos, not just of their family, but of all the people the foundation had helped. Faces of hope, of survival, of futures reclaimed. Rodolfo Black had tried to destroy Nathan Carey's life. Instead, he'd forged something stronger than revenge, more powerful than cruelty. He'd created a force for good that would outlast them all. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Life. Michael Woods adjusted his tie in the hallway mirror, the same ritual he'd performed every morning for the past 12 years. At 38, he possessed the kind of commanding presence that made boardrooms fall silent when he entered. 6'2", with steel-gray eyes and a jawline that could cut glass, Michael had built his reputation as a mergers and acquisitions specialist who never lost a deal. His corner office at Preston & Associates overlooked downtown Chicago, but today felt different. 3 months ago, Michael had made the decision that would change everything. After landing the biggest acquisition in the firm's history, a $2.8 billion pharmaceutical merger, he'd chosen to step back. The 60-hour weeks, the constant travel, the pressure that had made him miss too many of his son's baseball games. Carla had complained for years about his absence, and finally, Michael listened. "I want to be present for Sydney's childhood," he'd told his wife over dinner at their favorite steakhouse. "We have enough money saved. I could take a sabbatical, maybe start consulting from home." Carla Woods had smiled that practiced smile he'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. Even at 35, she retained the striking beauty that had turned heads when they met at Northwestern University. Auburn hair, emerald eyes, and a figure maintained through religious adherence to yoga and Pilates. "That's wonderful, honey. Sydney will love having his father around more." But something had shifted in those 3 months. Michael, trained to read people's micro-expressions in high-stakes negotiations, noticed the subtle changes. Carla's phone constantly buzzing with work messages. Her late-night yoga sessions that required full makeup. The way she'd flinch when he touched her unexpectedly. Sydney, their 9-year-old son, had inherited Michael's sharp intellect and Carla's artistic sensitivity. A straight-A student with a passion for chess and piano, he was everything Michael had hoped for in a child. But lately, Sydney seemed withdrawn, spending more time in his room, his normally bright chatter replaced by uncomfortable silences. "Dad, can I ask you something?" Sydney had said the night before, his small face serious as they worked on a 1,000-piece puzzle together. "Anything, buddy. Do you think Mom loves us?" The question hit Michael like a physical blow. "Of course she does. Why would you ask that?" Sydney shrugged, fitting a corner piece with the concentration of a surgeon. "She seems different, like she's thinking about other things when she looks at us." Michael had dismissed it as childhood insecurity, but the seed of doubt was planted. Now, as he watched Carla in the kitchen, efficiently packing Sydney's lunch while simultaneously texting someone, that doubt bloomed into suspicion. "Another early morning at the studio?" Michael asked, noting her professional attire, a silk blouse and tailored pants that seemed excessive for teaching art classes at the community center. "Board meeting," Carla replied without looking up. "New funding proposals. Might run late. So can you handle Sydney's pickup if the school calls?" "Of course." Michael studied her face, searching for tells he'd learned to recognize in countless business meetings. The slight tension around her eyes, the way her breathing changed when she lied. All there. Sydney bounded into the kitchen, his backpack slung over one shoulder, chess tournament medal gleaming on his jacket. "Dad, are you coming to my match today?" "Wouldn't miss it," Michael said, ruffling his son's dark hair. "Your opponent won't know what hit him." Carla glanced up from her phone, irritation flashing across her features. "Michael, maybe you shouldn't fill his head with so much confidence. It's not healthy." The comment stung. Michael had never known his own father, who'd abandoned the family when Michael was 7. He'd sworn to be different, to be present, to build his son's confidence rather than tear it down. Carla knew this, had supported it for years. Her criticism felt like a betrayal of everything they'd agreed upon. Confidence isn't the problem, Michael replied evenly. Self-doubt is. Carla's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it, and for just a moment, her face transformed. A soft smile, the kind she used to give Michael when they were newlyweds. Then she remembered where she was, and the mask slipped back into place. "I have to go," she said, grabbing her keys and purse. She kissed Sydney's forehead, a perfunctory peck that barely made contact. "Be good for your father." No kiss from Michael. No "love you" or "see you tonight." Just the click of her heels on the hardwood floor and the sound of her Mercedes pulling out of the driveway. "Dad," Sydney's voice was small. "Can we make pancakes?" Michael looked at his son, really looked at him. 9 years old and already learning that love wasn't guaranteed, that the people who were supposed to protect you could disappear without warning. Not on Michael's watch. "Pancakes it is," Michael said, rolling up his sleeves. "But we're talking chocolate chip pancakes. The kind your mother says will rot your teeth." Sydney giggled, the first genuine laugh Michael had heard from him in weeks. As they worked together in the kitchen, mixing batter and debating the optimal chocolate chip to pancake ratio, Michael made a silent promise. Whatever was happening with Carla, whatever game she was playing, he would protect his son. And if she was betraying their family, if she was destroying the life they'd built together, she would learn that Michael Woods was not a man who forgave easily. He'd spent his career dismantling companies and rebuilding them stronger. If necessary, he'd do the same with his marriage. The morning passed peacefully, father and son talking about everything and nothing. Sydney's chess strategy, the possibility of a family trip to Yellowstone, whether aliens might play chess. Normal conversations that felt precious in their simplicity. At 11:47 a.m., Michael's phone rang. "Riverside Elementary School. Mr. Woods? This is Principal Fleming. I'm afraid Sydney has been taken ill. He vomited in class and is asking for you. Can you come pick him up?" Michael was already reaching for his keys. "I'll be right there." Chapter 2. The Footage. Michael's Range Rover cut through midday traffic with practiced efficiency. Sydney was rarely sick, and when he was, it usually came with a fever or other obvious symptoms. This felt different, sudden and inexplicable. Riverside Elementary sat in one of Chicago's most prestigious neighborhoods, its red brick facade and manicured grounds reflecting the substantial tuition Michael paid for Sydney's education. The building buzzed with the controlled chaos of a school day in progress, children's voices echoing from classrooms as Michael strode toward the main office. Principal Josephine Fleming met him at the door, her expression grave. A woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and the bearing of someone accustomed to handling difficult situations. She gestured for Michael to follow her down the corridor. "How is he?" Michael asked, his pace matching hers. "Physically, he seems fine now. No fever, no other symptoms. But Mr. Woods, there's something else we need to discuss." They passed the nurse's office where Michael could see Sydney sitting on a cot, looking pale but alert. The boy's face brightened when he saw his father, but there was something else in his eyes. Relief mixed with an emotion Michael couldn't quite identify. "Dad!" Sydney jumped up, wrapping his arms around Michael's waist. "I want to go home." "We'll get you home, buddy. But first, let's make sure you're okay." Michael knelt to Sydney's eye level, examining his son's face. "What happened? Did you eat something weird?" Sydney's eyes darted toward Principal Fleming, then back to his father. My stomach hurt all of a sudden. Like when you see something that makes you feel sick inside. An odd way to describe nausea, but children often struggled to articulate physical symptoms. Michael stood, ready to sign whatever paperwork was necessary to take his son home. "Mr. Woods," Principal Fleming said, her tone careful. "Could I speak with you privately for a moment?" Michael glanced at Sydney, who had retreated to the cot. Something was definitely wrong here. "Buddy, can you wait here with Nurse Williams while I talk to Mrs. Fleming?" Sydney nodded, but Michael caught the flash of anxiety across his son's face. Whatever had happened, it was more than a simple stomach bug. Principal Fleming led him to her office, closing the door with deliberate care. Her desk was organized chaos, student files, scheduling charts, and a coffee mug that read "World's Most Patient Principal." She didn't sit, instead moving to stand by the window that overlooked the playground. "Mr. Woods, there was an incident today during recess. Sydney witnessed something that, well, it's complicated." Michael's spine straightened. "What kind of incident?" "Your wife came to pick up Sydney early, around 10:30 a.m. She had proper identification and was on our approved pickup list, so there was no issue with releasing him to her care." Michael's blood pressure spiked. "Carla picked him up? She's supposed to be at work. She didn't mention anything about an appointment." That's what concerned us. Sydney seemed confused by the early pickup. He kept asking where you were, why his mother was taking him out of school. When Mrs. Chun, his teacher, asked your wife about the reason for the early departure, she was vague. Said it was a family matter. The pieces weren't fitting together. Carla had specifically asked Michael to handle any school issues because she'd be in meetings all day. Why would she show up unannounced to collect Sydney? Where did they go? Michael asked. Principal Fleming's expression grew more troubled. That's where things get interesting. About an hour later, Sydney returned to school. Alone. He walked through the front doors, went straight to his classroom, and sat down as if nothing had happened. When Mrs. Chun asked where he'd been, Sydney vomited. Michael felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. Returned alone? How is that possible? Where was Carla? We don't know. Sydney won't talk about what happened during that hour. He just keeps saying his stomach hurts, and he wants his father. This wasn't making sense. Carla wouldn't abandon Sydney somewhere. Whatever her faults, she wasn't neglectful of their son's safety. Unless, has anyone reviewed the security footage? Michael asked. Principal Fleming nodded. That's actually why I wanted to speak with you privately. The footage is disturbing, not because of any immediate danger to Sydney, but because of what it reveals about the situation. She moved to her computer, pulling up the security system interface. The cameras cover our parking lot and main entrance. What you're about to see might be difficult to watch. The screen flickered to life, showing the familiar view of the school's front parking area. Timestamp, 10:31 a.m. Michael watched Carla's silver Mercedes pull into a visitor space. She emerged from the driver's seat, checking her appearance in the side mirror. A gesture he'd seen thousands of times. Normal. Routine. Fast forward to 10:47 a.m., Principal Fleming said. The same parking lot, now with Carla and Sydney walking toward her car. But Sydney's body language was wrong. His shoulders were hunched, his head down. He moved like a child being led to punishment rather than a son being picked up by his mother. Watch the passenger side, Principal Fleming said quietly. As Carla opened the rear door for Sydney, another figure emerged from the passenger seat. A man, tall, athletic build, wearing a baseball cap that obscured his face from the camera's angle. He said something to Carla that made her laugh, the same soft smile Michael had seen in the kitchen that morning. Who is that? Michael's voice was steel. We don't know. The angle doesn't give us a clear view of his face. But there's more. The footage continued. Carla, Sydney, and the unknown man got into the Mercedes. They drove off together. The timestamp showed they were gone for exactly 53 minutes. Now watch the return, Principal Fleming said, fast-forwarding to 11:40 a.m. The Mercedes returned, but this time only Carla and Sydney got out. The man remained in the passenger seat, his face still concealed. Carla walked Sydney to the entrance, her hand on his shoulder in what appeared to be a serious conversation. Sydney's posture was even more dejected than when they'd left. Michael watched his wife embrace their son, a longer hug than usual. She appeared to be whispering something in his ear. Then she released him and walked back to the car, where the mystery passenger was waiting. Sydney went straight to his classroom and became ill within minutes, Principal Fleming explained. When we tried to call you, we couldn't reach your wife. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Michael's mind was racing through possibilities, each one worse than the last. Carla had lied about her schedule. She'd picked up Sydney without permission or explanation. She'd taken him somewhere with another man for nearly an hour. And whatever Sydney had witnessed during that time had made him physically sick. I need a copy of that footage, Michael said. Mr. Woods, I understand your concern, but we have protocols. Josephine. Michael's voice carried the authority that had closed billion-dollar deals. My wife lied to me and to your school. She took my son somewhere without authorization, in the company of an unidentified man, and brought him back traumatized. I'm not asking for your permission to protect my family. Principal Fleming studied his face for a long moment. In her years as an educator, she developed a keen sense for reading parents. Michael Woods wasn't a man who made idle threats or empty demands. There was something dangerous in his stillness, like a predator calculating its next move. I'll have our IT department prepare a copy for you, she said finally. But Mr. Woods, if this is heading where I think it is, please remember that Sydney needs stability above all else. Michael stood, his expression unreadable. Sydney will have stability. I guarantee it. As they returned to collect Sydney, Michael's phone buzzed with a text message. Carla, running later than expected. Board meeting turned into dinner. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you. The casual lie wrapped in false affection. Michael deleted the message without responding. Sydney remained quiet during the drive home, staring out the window at the Chicago skyline. Michael wanted to press for details about the missing hour, but his son's fragile state demanded patience. Whatever Sydney had seen, it was traumatic enough to make him physically ill. Pushing now would only cause more damage. Dad, Sydney's voice was barely above a whisper. Yeah, buddy. Are you and Mom going to get divorced? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Michael had always been honest with Sydney, treating him as intelligent enough to handle age-appropriate truths. But this truth, the growing certainty that Carla was having an affair, would shatter his son's world. Why would you ask that? Sydney was quiet for several blocks. When he finally spoke, his words were careful and measured. Sometimes adults do things that hurt other people, and sometimes the people who get hurt can't forgive them. Michael glanced in the rearview mirror. His 9-year-old son was staring back at him with eyes that looked decades older than they should. Whatever happens between your mother and me, Michael said carefully, it won't change how much I love you. You understand that, right? Sydney nodded, but the sadness in his expression suggested he understood far more than any child should have to. As they pulled into their driveway, Michael made a decision. Whatever game Carla was playing, whatever betrayal she was orchestrating, it ended now. He would gather evidence, understand the full scope of her deception, and then he would act. Michael Woods had built his reputation on never losing. He didn't intend to start now. Chapter 3. The plan takes shape. That evening, Michael sat in his home office with the security footage playing on a loop. Frame by frame, he analyzed every detail of the mysterious passenger in Carla's car. The man's build suggested someone in his 30s or 40s, athletic but not bulky. Designer shoes visible when he'd stepped out briefly. Wedding ring on his left hand, a detail that made Michael's jaw clench. Sydney was asleep upstairs, exhausted from the day's emotional trauma. Michael had spent an hour reading with him, letting his son decompress with familiar stories about knights and dragons. Simple tales where heroes always won and villains were easily identified. If only real life offered such clarity. At 9:47 p.m., Carla's Mercedes pulled into the driveway. Michael minimized the video file and picked up a business magazine, arranging himself in his leather chair as if he'd been reading all evening. The sound of her heels on a marble foyer echoed through the house, each click deliberate and measured. Michael, I'm home, she called, her voice carrying false brightness. In the office, he replied, without looking up from an article about market volatility that he wasn't actually reading. Carla appeared in the doorway, still wearing the same outfit from that morning, but with subtle changes. Her lipstick had been reapplied recently. Her hair, while professionally styled, showed signs of being touched, the kind of slight musing that came from intimate contact. How did the board meeting go? Michael asked, his tone conversational. Productive, but exhausting. We're applying for a major arts grant, so there's a lot of documentation required. She moved to the built-in bar cart, pouring herself a glass of wine with the practiced ease of someone who needed alcohol to maintain her performance. How was Sydney? Any problems at school? The question was asked with the casual interest of a mother checking on routine matters. No acknowledgement of her unauthorized pickup, no explanation for the mysterious passenger, no concern for why Sydney had become ill. Either she was a masterful actress, or she genuinely believed Michael was unaware of the day's events. He got sick, Michael said, watching her reaction carefully. Vomited in class around noon. I had to pick him up. Carla's hand paused for a fraction of a second before lifting the wine glass to her lips. Poor baby. Is he feeling better? Seems to be. The nurse thought it might be something he ate, but he didn't have breakfast with the usual foods. Michael turned a page in his magazine, maintaining the appearance of distraction. Strange that it came on so suddenly. Children's stomachs are sensitive, Carla replied, settling into the chair across from his desk. Too much excitement, not enough sleep, changes in routine. Any number of things could trigger nausea. Changes in routine, like being unexpectedly picked up from school by a mother who was supposed to be in meetings all day, taken somewhere with a strange man, and returned traumatized. You're probably right, Michael agreed. He seemed particularly upset about something, though. Kept asking if we were getting divorced. This time Carla's reaction was more pronounced. Her glass clinked against her teeth as she took a hasty sip. That's ridiculous. Where would he get an idea like that? Kids are perceptive. They pick up on tension, changes in family dynamics. Michael finally looked up from his magazine, meeting her eyes directly. Sometimes they see things that adults think they're hiding effectively. For a moment, Carla's mask slipped. Fear flickered across her features before she regained control. Michael, if you have something to say, just say it. The moment of truth. Michael could confront her now, demand explanations, force the crisis into the open. But years of corporate warfare had taught him patience. Information was power, and he didn't yet have enough to ensure total victory. I'm saying our son is worried about his family, Michael replied calmly. And maybe we should be more aware of how our behavior affects him. Carla relaxed slightly, interpreting his words as general marital advice rather than a specific accusation. You're right. We should probably spend more family time together. Maybe plan something special for the weekend. Good idea. Michael returned to his magazine. I'm sure Sydney would enjoy that. They sat in silence for several minutes, the unspoken tension filling the space between them. Carla finished her wine and excused herself to shower and prepare for bed. Michael listened to her footsteps on the stairs, the sound of water running through the pipes, the familiar rhythm of her nighttime routine. When he was certain she was occupied, Michael opened his laptop and began researching private investigators. He needed more than security footage and suspicions. He needed irrefutable evidence of her affair, documentation of her lies, and most importantly, he needed to understand how deep the deception went. The first PI firm he contacted came highly recommended for marital investigations. Discretion guaranteed, their website promised. Evidence that holds up in court. Michael scheduled a consultation for the following morning. Next, he reviewed his financial accounts. Joint checking, savings, investment portfolios, all easily accessible to Carla. If she was planning to leave him for her mystery lover, she might be siphoning money gradually to avoid detection. A quick review showed no unusual withdrawals, but Michael transferred the majority of their liquid assets to accounts in his name only. If Carla wanted to play games with their marriage, she wouldn't be doing it with his money. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Hope your son feels better tomorrow. Kids bounce back fast from stomach bugs. Michael stared at the message, his blood running cold. Someone knew about Sydney's illness, someone who wasn't supposed to have his number. The text felt like a taunt, a demonstration of how closely he was being watched. He screenshotted the message and forwarded it to his personal email for documentation. Then he blocked the number and enabled additional security settings on his phone. Whatever game was being played, it had escalated beyond simple adultery. Upstairs, the shower turned off. Soon Carla would emerge, slip into bed beside him, and continue the charade of their marriage. Michael wondered how long she'd been lying to him, how many board meetings and yoga sessions had been cover for her affair. The betrayal cut deep, but the rage went deeper. Michael Woods was not a man who accepted defeat gracefully. In the corporate world, he was known for his ability to turn hostile takeovers into complete domination. Companies that challenged him didn't just lose. They were dismantled piece by piece until nothing remained but cautionary tales. As he climbed the stairs to his bedroom, Michael began formulating his strategy. Phase 1. Gather comprehensive evidence of Carla's infidelity. Phase 2. Identify her lover and understand his weaknesses. Phase 3. Systematically destroy both of them in ways that would serve as permanent reminders of what happened to people who betrayed Michael Woods. Sydney would be protected throughout the process. Whatever the cost to himself, Michael would ensure his son emerged from this stronger rather than broken. The boy had already seen too much, understood too much for his age. But children were resilient, and Sydney would learn valuable lessons about loyalty, consequences, and the importance of choosing allies wisely. Carla was already in bed when Michael entered their bedroom, her breathing deep and even in what appeared to be sleep. But Michael noticed the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes moved beneath closed lids. She was awake, listening, calculating her next move, just as he was calculating his. Let her think she was winning. Let her believe her deception was working. In chess, the most devastating attacks often began with an apparent retreat, luring the opponent into a false sense of security before delivering the killing blow. Michael had taught Sydney that same principle during their games. Sometimes you have to sacrifice a piece to win the war, he'd explained. The key is making sure your opponent doesn't realize they're already beaten until it's too late to escape. As he settled into bed beside his lying wife, Michael smiled in the darkness. Carla had made her choice. Now she would live with the consequences. Chapter 4. The investigation begins. Michael's appointment with Brewer Investigations was scheduled for 8 a.m. at a discreet office building in downtown Chicago. The firm occupied the 13th floor, with a reception area that looked more like a high-end law office than the stereotypical private investigator setup he'd imagined. Dean Klein, the lead investigator, was a former FBI agent whose reputation for thoroughness had earned him clients ranging from Fortune 500 CEOs to federal prosecutors. At 52, he possessed the kind of quiet intensity that came from decades of uncovering secrets people thought were buried forever. "Mr. Woods," Klein said, gesturing to a leather chair across from his mahogany desk. "I understand you have a marital situation that requires investigation." Michael had prepared for this conversation carefully. In corporate negotiations, information flow was crucial. Share enough to secure cooperation, but never reveal your full strategy. "My wife is having an affair. I need comprehensive documentation for divorce proceedings." "Understood. Do you have any evidence currently?" Michael slid a USB drive across the desk. "Security footage from my son's school yesterday. Timestamp 10:31 a.m. through 11:40 a.m. My wife picked up our 9-year-old son with an unidentified male companion, took him somewhere for nearly an hour, then returned him to school. She told me she would be in board meetings all day." Klein connected the drive to his computer, watching the footage with the analytical eye of someone who'd seen every variation of human deception. The male subject is careful about camera angles, knows he's being recorded. This suggests premeditation rather than spontaneous behavior. That's my assessment as well. How long have you suspected the affair? 3 months, since I took a sabbatical from work to spend more time with family. Her behavior patterns changed significantly when I became more present at home. Klein made notes on a legal pad. Has she been careless with her phone, computer, or other communications? She's actually become more secretive. Password protected everything. Changed her phone settings to prevent message previews. But last night, I received this. Michael showed him the anonymous text about Sydney's illness. "Someone is monitoring your family's activities," Klein observed. "This could be your lover, or it could be a third party. We'll need to investigate both possibilities." Michael leaned forward. "I want comprehensive surveillance on my wife. Phone records, email monitoring, GPS tracking, financial activity. Everything legal and admissible in court. That's extensive. Are you prepared for what we might uncover? Sometimes the truth is more devastating than the suspicion." Michael's expression hardened. "I'm prepared for anything. What I won't tolerate is being played for a fool while my son is caught in the middle." Klein quoted his rates. substantial but reasonable considering the scope of work involved. Michael authorized payment for 2 weeks of intensive investigation, with the option to extend based on findings. We'll need to install tracking software on her devices, Klein explained. That requires physical access to her phone and computer for approximately 10 minutes each. Not a problem. She goes to yoga every Tuesday and Thursday evening. I can create an opportunity. We'll also need to establish financial monitoring. If she's planning to leave you, there might be hidden accounts or unusual transactions. Michael had already begun this process, but Klein's resources would be more comprehensive. Whatever it takes. As Michael left the investigation office, his phone rang. Carla. Good morning, honey. Her voice carried the artificial sweetness of someone performing happiness. I forgot to mention yesterday. I have a lunch meeting with a potential donor today. Might run until mid-afternoon. Another lie. Michael checked his watch. 9:15 a.m. Less than 12 hours since her last fabrication, and she was already constructing her next one. Of course, Michael replied. Anyone I might know? Brett Pearson. He runs a foundation that supports community arts programs. Very generous patron, but he likes to take his time making decisions. Brett Pearson. Michael filed the name away, already planning to research every detail of the man's life. If this was her lover, his name alone was a major break in the case. Sounds promising. Will you be able to pick up Sydney from school, or should I handle it? You should handle it, Carla said quickly. Brett prefers longer conversations, and I don't want to seem rushed. No problem. Sydney and I can grab dinner somewhere if you're running late. Perfect. Love you. The words felt like ice picks in his chest. Love you. How easily she wielded that phrase as a weapon, using their shared history to deflect suspicion while she systematically destroyed their marriage. Michael drove home and immediately began researching Brett Pearson online. What he found was worse than he'd imagined. Pearson was 34, a successful commercial real estate developer whose foundation work was well documented in local media. Handsome in the way that attracted women and intimidated men, with the kind of effortless confidence that came from inherited wealth. His LinkedIn profile showed extensive connections in Chicago's arts community, making his interaction with Carla plausible. More disturbing were the society photos from charity events over the past year. Several showed Pearson and Carla together, always in group settings, never obviously intimate, but their body language told a story. The way she angled toward him in conversations, the frequent eye contact, the subtle touches on his arm when she laughed at his comments. Michael found their first public appearance together, a September gallery opening, exactly 3 months ago, right when Carla's behavior had started changing. The timeline was damning. Deeper research revealed more troubling details. Pearson was married to Allison Pearson, a pediatric surgeon at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. They had 2 young children and appeared to be the perfect family based on their social media presence. Like Michael and Carla, they seemed to have everything: wealth, career success, beautiful children. But Michael's trained eye spotted the cracks. Pearson's recent Instagram post showed him at events without his wife, claiming she was on call or with the kids. Dr. Allison Pearson's posts had become less frequent and more focused on her work rather than family activities. The classic pattern of a marriage under strain. His phone buzzed with a text from Dean Klein. Initial financial review complete. Found 3 cash withdrawals of $500 each over the past month. Always on days when your wife claimed to be at yoga or board meetings. Transactions occurred at ATMs near the Drake Hotel downtown. The Drake Hotel. Expensive, discreet, frequented by people who valued privacy over economy. Michael had taken Carla there for their 5th anniversary, back when their marriage was genuine rather than a performance. Now she was using their old romantic hideaway to betray him. Michael's rage was building, but he channeled it into planning. Emotional decisions led to tactical errors, and he couldn't afford mistakes. This required the same methodical approach he'd used to dismantle hostile corporations, identify weaknesses, exploit vulnerabilities, and strike when the target was most exposed. He spent the afternoon researching Dr. Allison Pearson, learning everything he could about Brett's wife. A brilliant surgeon apparently dedicated to her family, completely unaware that her husband was destroying two marriages simultaneously. She deserved to know the truth, but timing was crucial. Revealing the affair prematurely might allow both cheaters to escape consequences. At 3:30 p.m., Michael arrived at Riverside Elementary to collect Sydney. His son emerged from the building looking much better than the previous day, his natural resilience having restored his typical energy. "Dad, can we go to that pizza place with the arcade games?" "Absolutely," Michael replied, relieved to see Sydney acting normally. "But first, tell me about your day." "Everything good." Sydney climbed into the Range Rover, buckling his seatbelt with the efficiency of a child accustomed to luxury vehicles. "Mrs. Chun asked if I was feeling better, and Tommy Wilkins asked why I left school early yesterday." Michael's attention sharpened. "What did you tell him?" "I said Mom had to take me somewhere." Sydney's voice became smaller. "I didn't tell him about the man." "The man in Mom's car?" Sydney nodded, his earlier enthusiasm fading. "Dad, why did Mom take me to that place? And why did the man keep looking at his watch like he wanted to leave?" This was the opening Michael had been hoping for, a chance to understand what Sydney had witnessed without traumatizing him further. "Can you tell me about the place? What did it look like?" "It was a big building with lots of windows, like where rich people live in movies. Mom and the man went inside, and I had to wait in the car for a really long time." The Drake Hotel. Michael's suspicions were confirmed, but the detail about Sydney waiting in the car added a new layer of cruelty to the situation. Carla had brought their son along to her affair, forcing him to be complicit in her betrayal. "Were you scared waiting by yourself?" "A little, but mostly I was confused. The man seemed nice when he talked to me, but he kept looking at Mom in a way that made me feel weird." Michael felt his control slipping, rage building like pressure in a sealed container. His wife had exposed their innocent child to her sordid affair, traumatizing Sydney with adult complexities he shouldn't have to understand, that crossed a line from simple adultery into something unforgivable. "Dad," Sydney's voice brought him back to the present. "Are you okay? You look angry." Michael forced himself to relax, remembering that Sydney needed stability above all else. "I'm fine, buddy. Sometimes adults have to deal with complicated problems, but that's not your responsibility." They drove to Pizza Palace, where Sydney's mood improved dramatically as he demolished 3 slices of pepperoni pizza and dominated the arcade games. Michael watched his son laugh and play, memorizing these moments of innocence before the storm that was coming. His phone buzzed with another message from Klein. Subject's phone GPS shows her at the Drake Hotel, room 847. Same location for the past 2 hours. I have operatives in position for photographic evidence. Room 847. The same suite Michael had booked for their anniversary years ago. The symbolism was intentional and vicious. Michael deleted the message and focused on Sydney, who had just achieved a new high score on a driving simulator. "Nice work, champ. You're getting good at this." "I learned from the best," Sydney grinned, echoing something Michael had said during their first arcade visit years ago. That evening, Carla returned home at 8:30 p.m., her cheeks flushed and her hair slightly messed despite obvious attempts to fix it. She greeted Sydney with genuine warmth, but avoided extended eye contact with Michael. "How was your meeting?" Michael asked as they prepared for bed. "Very productive. Brett is interested in funding our new youth program." She disappeared into their walk-in closet, emerging in silk pajamas that Michael recognized as recent purchases. "He wants to schedule a follow-up meeting next week." "Sounds like a generous man." "He is. Very passionate about supporting the arts." Michael wondered if she could hear the absurdity of her own words. Passionate about supporting the arts. More like passionate about supporting his wife into hotel beds. As Carla settled into bed beside him, Michael's phone vibrated with an encrypted message from Klein containing a single photograph. The image was taken through a hotel window using a telephoto lens. It showed Carla and Brett Pearson in an intimate embrace, both partially clothed, clearly in the aftermath of sexual activity. Michael stared at the photo for several seconds, letting the reality of his wife's betrayal crystallize into cold certainty. No more doubts, no more hoping for innocent explanations. She had chosen to destroy their marriage for a man who was betraying his own family. He forwarded the image to a secure folder and deleted it from his phone. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Michael. Carla's voice was soft in the darkness. Are you awake? Yeah. I love you. Michael didn't respond immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady and emotionless. I know exactly what you are, Carla. And soon, everyone else will too. She shifted beside him, perhaps sensing the menace in his tone, but not understanding its source. What do you mean? Nothing. Just thinking about family loyalty and what it means to honor commitments. Carla fell silent, but Michael could feel her tension in the darkness. Let her wonder. Let her worry. In chess, psychological pressure often forced opponents into making desperate moves that exposed their weaknesses. Michael Woods was done being played. Now, it was his turn to control the game. Chapter 5. The trap is set. Dean Klein's report arrived at 6 a.m. via encrypted email, comprehensive and damning. Over the past week, Klein's team had documented 17 separate meetings between Carla and Brett Pearson. Hotels, restaurants, her art studio after hours, even a weekend trip to Lake Geneva that Carla had claimed was a solo retreat for artistic inspiration. The financial evidence was equally devastating. Carla had been gradually moving money from their joint accounts to a separate checking account opened 3 weeks ago. Small amounts to avoid detection, but the pattern was clear. She was funding an exit strategy. Most interesting was the intelligence on Brett Pearson. Klein's research revealed a man with a history of marital infidelity. 2 previous affairs during his 8-year marriage to Dr. Allison Pearson, both with younger women involved in arts organizations his foundation supported. The pattern suggested predatory behavior rather than genuine romance. Your wife isn't his first target, Klein noted in his summary. She's just the latest in a series of married women he's seduced using his foundation work as cover. Michael absorbed this information while Sydney ate breakfast, chattering about an upcoming chess tournament. His son's normalcy felt surreal against the backdrop of documented betrayal and calculated deception. Dad, you're not listening, Sydney complained good-naturedly. I said Mrs. Chan wants to enter me in the state championship. That's fantastic, buddy, Michael replied, forcing himself to focus. You've been practicing hard. You deserve the opportunity. Will you come watch if I make it to the finals? Wild horses couldn't keep me away. Sydney beamed, unaware that his father was simultaneously planning the destruction of his mother's secret life. Michael had spent the morning crafting a strategy that would expose both adulterers while protecting Sydney from the worst of the fallout. After dropping Sydney at school, Michael drove to Dr. Allison Pearson's office at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. The pediatric surgery wing buzzed with activity, nurses, residents, worried parents clutching coffee cups in waiting areas. Michael had researched Dr. Pearson extensively and knew her schedule. She had a 15-minute break between surgeries at 10:30 a.m. He found her in the physician's lounge, reviewing patient charts over a cup of coffee. At 31, Allison Pearson was strikingly beautiful in an understated way. Intelligent eyes, confident posture, the kind of composed professionalism that came from saving children's lives on a regular basis. Dr. Pearson, Michael approached with the careful deference appropriate for interrupting a surgeon. I'm Michael Woods. I apologize for coming unannounced, but I have information about your husband that you need to see. Allison looked up from her charts, instantly alert. I'm sorry, who are you? My wife is having an affair with Brett. I have photographic evidence. The words hit like a physical blow. Allison's coffee cup trembled slightly, but her expression remained controlled. Years of delivering devastating news to parents had taught her to process shock without losing composure. I don't understand, she said quietly. Why are you telling me this? Michael sat across from her, pulling out a tablet containing selected images from Klein's surveillance. Nothing pornographic, but intimate enough to leave no doubt about the nature of Carla and Brett's relationship. Hotel embraces, passionate kisses in restaurant parking lots, their bodies intertwined on what appeared to be a private balcony. Allison studied each image with the analytical precision of a surgeon examining X-rays. When she finished, she closed the tablet and leaned back in her chair. How long? She asked. At least 3 months. Possibly longer. And your wife? Carla, you said? She's married to you? 15 years. We have a 9-year-old son. Allison nodded slowly, pieces clicking into place. The late board meetings. The foundation work requiring evening and weekend hours. The sudden interest in supporting emerging artists. Her voice carried bitter recognition. I should have known. This isn't his first time. I'm aware of his history, Michael said carefully. But I wanted you to hear it from me before taking any action. Action? Allison's laugh was sharp and humorless. What kind of action did you have in mind? Michael leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Brett and Carla think they're being clever. Meeting in hotels, using foundation business as cover, planning their escape from their respective marriages. But they've made assumptions about how their betrayed spouses will react. Such as, they expect us to divorce quietly, divide assets according to standard agreements, and fade away while they build their new life together. Michael's smile was predatory. They're about to learn how wrong they are. Allison studied his face, seeing something that made her lean back slightly. What exactly are you proposing? A coordinated response. We expose their affair publicly, document their deception comprehensively, and ensure they face consequences that extend far beyond simple divorce proceedings. I'm a pediatric surgeon, Allison said slowly. I save children's lives. I don't engage in revenge plots. And I'm a merger and acquisitions specialist who spent 15 years destroying companies that tried to cheat me. Michael's voice remained calm, but intensity radiated from him like heat. The difference is, this time it's personal. Allison was quiet for several minutes, processing the information and the proposal. When she spoke again, her voice carried a new edge. What did you have in mind? Michael outlined his plan. Brett's foundation depended on his reputation as a family man committed to community values. His real estate business relied on trust and personal relationships. His social standing in Chicago's elite circles was built on the image of a devoted husband and father. All of that disappears when his pattern of behavior becomes public knowledge, Michael explained. But we need to coordinate our timing to maximize impact. And Carla, my wife has built her identity around being the perfect mother and devoted partner. Her art career depends on the community connections she's cultivated over years of playing that role. She's also been stealing from our joint accounts to fund her exit strategy. Michael showed Allison the financial evidence Klein had gathered. Embezzlement from a spouse can be prosecuted criminally in Illinois if the amount exceeds certain thresholds. She's already crossed that line. Allison absorbed this information with the same analytical precision she'd applied to the surveillance photos. You're talking about destroying both their lives completely. I'm talking about consequences matching actions. They made choices. Now they live with the results. And our children? How do we protect them from the fallout? Sydney is my priority above everything else, Michael said firmly. Whatever we do, his well-being comes first. But children are resilient when they understand that one parent is fighting to protect the family while the other is tearing it apart. Allison checked her watch. I have surgery in 5 minutes. But Michael, if we do this, there's no going back. Are you absolutely certain you want to go to war? Michael thought about Sydney waiting in the car while his mother betrayed their family, about the text messages taunting him with knowledge of his son's distress, about 15 years of marriage being casually discarded for a serial adulterer who collected married women like trophies. They already started the war, he said quietly. I'm just choosing to fight back. Allison stood, gathering her charts and surgical cap. Give me 48 hours to think about this. If I decide to join you, how do we coordinate? Michael handed her a business card with his personal cell number. Text me a single word. Justice. I'll take that as agreement to proceed. And if I decide this is too dangerous, then I proceed alone. But Allison, understand something. This is happening whether you participate or not. The only question is whether you want some control over how it unfolds. Allison nodded and walked toward the surgical wing, her stride confident despite the bombshell that had just exploded her marriage. Michael watched her go, recognizing a kindred spirit. She had the steel necessary for what was coming. His phone buzzed with a text from Carla. Lunch meeting with Brett ran long. Having dinner with him tonight to finalize foundation details. Don't wait up. Michael deleted the message without responding. Let her think she was winning. Let both of them believe they were cleverly managing their deception while their betrayed spouses remained oblivious. At 3:30 p.m., Michael picked up Sydney from school. His son was animated about his chess tournament preparation, demonstrating moves on a pocket chess set during the drive home. Dad, look at this opening. It's called the Queen's Gambit. You sacrifice a pawn early to control the center of the board. Interesting strategy, Michael replied, watching Sydney manipulate the pieces. Sometimes you have to give up something small to gain something bigger. Exactly. And the best part is, your opponent thinks they're winning when they take your pawn, but really you're setting up for a much stronger attack later. Michael smiled, genuinely for the first time in days. His son was inadvertently describing the exact strategy Michael was employing against Carla and Brett. They thought they were winning, stealing time together, planning their future, believing their spouses were helpless to stop them. They had no idea the real game had just begun. That evening, as Carla prepared for another foundation meeting, Michael sat in his office reviewing the final elements of his plan. Everything was in place. Evidence, coordination with Dr. Pearson, timing for maximum impact. His phone buzzed with a single text from an unknown number. Justice. Dr. Allison Pearson had made her choice. The war was about to begin in earnest. Chapter 6. The Alliance. Michael met Dr. Allison Pearson at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park, far enough from both their usual haunts to avoid accidental encounters with mutual acquaintances. She arrived precisely on time, her professional composure intact, but with an underlying tension that suggested sleepless nights and difficult decisions. I've been thinking about our conversation, Allison said without preamble, sliding into the booth across from him. Before I commit to anything, I need to understand exactly what you're planning. Michael appreciated her directness. Complete exposure and systematic destruction of their ability to continue their affair or build a life together. Be more specific. Michael pulled out a folder containing detailed plans he'd spent the past 2 days refining. Phase 1. Document their pattern of deception comprehensively. We need irrefutable evidence of not just the affair, but the lies, financial theft, and emotional abuse of their families. Phase 2. Simultaneous public exposure. Brett's foundation board receives evidence of his misuse of charitable work for personal affairs. Your hospital administration learns about his pattern of targeting married women in vulnerable positions. Carla's art community discovers her theft from joint marital assets and abandonment of family responsibilities. Allison nodded slowly. Phase 3. Legal and financial consequences. Divorce proceedings that ensure maximum penalty for adultery and theft. Civil suits for alienation of affection and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Criminal charges where applicable. And Phase 4. Michael's smile was cold. Personal destruction. Brett loses his foundation, his business relationships, his social standing. Carla loses her artistic credibility, her community connections, her ability to play the victim. They get exactly what they've earned. Allison studied the documentation, her surgeon's mind analyzing each element for flaws or excessive risk. This is incredibly thorough and ruthless. They chose to make war on our families. I'm simply ensuring they lose that war decisively. What about collateral damage? Your son, my children, innocent people who might be affected? Sydney is my primary concern, Michael said firmly. Everything I'm planning is designed to protect him while teaching him important lessons about loyalty and consequences. Your children will be better off learning their father's true character now rather than discovering it years later when the damage is even worse. Allison was quiet for several minutes, weighing decisions that would reshape multiple lives. When she spoke again, her voice carried resolve. I'm in, but I have conditions. Name them. First, no physical violence. We destroy them professionally and socially, but we don't cross into assault or intimidation. Agreed. Second, we protect the children above all else. If any part of this plan threatens their psychological well-being, we modify or abort. Absolutely. Third, we document everything we do so that if this escalates legally, we can prove our actions were measured responses to their betrayal rather than harassment. Michael respected her caution. Smart thinking. Anything else? Yes. When this is over, we don't become friends or support each other through the aftermath. This is a tactical alliance, not a personal relationship. We both need to rebuild our lives separately. Understood. Michael extended his hand across the table. Partners in justice? Allison shook it firmly. Partners in justice. They spent the next hour coordinating their timeline. Klein's surveillance team had identified a pattern in Carla and Brett's meetings. Every Thursday, they met at the Drake Hotel for 3 hours, arriving separately and leaving together. This Thursday, Michael and Allison would be ready with photographers, financial documentation, and witnesses. I've arranged for a private investigator to document their meeting from inside the hotel, Michael explained. My PI has connections with hotel security who can provide access to hallway cameras. And I've contacted a forensic accountant to analyze both our financial records, Allison added. We need to document the full scope of their financial deception before they can hide assets or claim ignorance. They were interrupted by Allison's phone buzzing with a text message. She glanced at it, her expression hardening. Brett, asking if I can pick up the kids tonight because he has a late foundation meeting. What will you tell him? That I'll handle it, of course. I always do. Allison's bitterness was evident. He's been using my dedication to our children as cover for his affairs. Every time he needs to meet Carla, he creates a situation where I have to manage family responsibilities alone. Michael felt a surge of protective anger on her behalf. That ends Thursday. After we expose them, he won't be able to manipulate you anymore. I'm looking forward to that conversation, Allison said with grim satisfaction. They parted ways with encrypted communication protocols established and specific assignments for gathering final evidence. Michael drove home feeling energized for the first time in months. Having an ally, especially one as intelligent and determined as Dr. Pearson, doubled his confidence in the plan's success. Sydney was in the living room when Michael arrived, surrounded by chess books and practicing complex endgame scenarios. His son's dedication to mastering the game reminded Michael of his own obsessive preparation for corporate battles. How's the tournament preparation going? Michael asked, settling beside Sydney on the couch. Really good. I learned this amazing sacrifice play where you give up your queen to force checkmate in 4 moves. Want to see? Michael watched Sydney demonstrate the tactical sequence, marveling at his son's growing sophistication. That's brilliant, buddy. Sometimes the biggest sacrifice leads to the most decisive victory. Mrs. Chun says chess teaches you to think 10 moves ahead. Like, you have to see what your opponent might do and be ready for all the possibilities. She's absolutely right. The best chess players and the best people always have contingency plans. Sydney nodded seriously. Dad, can I ask you something? Always. If someone lies to you, is it okay to lie back to them? The question caught Michael off guard. What do you mean? Like if someone is being mean or dishonest, can you trick them back to protect yourself? Michael chose his words carefully. Sometimes protecting yourself or your family requires strategic thinking. The important thing is making sure your actions match your values and that you're fighting for the right reasons. So, it's okay to be sneaky if someone is being sneaky to you first. It's okay to be smart when someone is trying to hurt you or the people you love. Sydney seemed satisfied with this answer, returning to his chess studies. But Michael wondered what had prompted the question. Children picked up on adult tensions, even when adults thought they were being subtle. At 7:30 p.m., Carla called to say she'd be having a working dinner with potential foundation donors and wouldn't be home until late. Michael no longer felt the stab of betrayal that had accompanied her earlier lies. Now, her deception simply provided more rope for her to hang herself with. No problem, he told her. Sydney and I are having a great evening. Take all the time you need. After Sydney went to bed, Michael reviewed the final details of Thursday's operation. Klein's team would be positioned throughout the Drake Hotel with multiple photographers and recording equipment. The hotel's security chief, motivated by a substantial cash payment, would provide access to service corridors and elevator cameras. Most importantly, Michael had arranged for Dr. Pearson to accidentally encounter Carla and Brett in the hotel lobby. The confrontation would be recorded, providing irrefutable evidence of their affair while demonstrating their callous disregard for their betrayed spouses. His phone buzzed with a message from Allison. Forensic accountant found $23,000 in unauthorized transfers from your joint accounts to Carla's private account. Also discovered Brett has been using foundation funds to pay for hotel rooms and restaurant meals. We have them on multiple felonies. Michael smiled grimly. Financial crimes carried serious legal consequences and would add credibility to their claims of systematic deception. The Foundation Board would have no choice but to remove Brett immediately, and the IRS would likely launch their own investigation. Wednesday passed in a blur of final preparations. Michael maintained his normal routine with Sydney, school pickup, homework help, dinner together, while orchestrating the most complex revenge operation of his life. The dichotomy felt surreal but appropriate. He was simultaneously protecting his son's innocence and preparing to shatter the illusions that threatened their family. Thursday morning arrived with unseasonable warmth for October. Michael dressed carefully in his sharpest business suit, armor for the battle ahead. As he prepared Sydney's breakfast, his son looked up from his cereal with a serious expression. "Dad, are you going somewhere important today? Why do you ask? You look like you're getting ready for war." Michael paused, struck by his son's perceptiveness. Sometimes adults have to have difficult conversations to protect their families. Like when you told Tommy Wilkins' dad to stop bullying kids at the playground. Michael remembered that incident from the previous year. A father who thought his son's aggressive behavior was boys being boys, until Michael had a private conversation about appropriate boundaries and consequences. Something like that, Michael agreed. Sometimes people need to learn that their actions have consequences. Sydney nodded solemnly. "I hope the difficult conversation goes okay." "It will," Michael assured him. Sometimes the truth is hard to hear, but it's always better than living with lies. As Michael dropped Sydney at school, he felt the weight of impending justice settling over him like a familiar coat. Today, Carla and Brett would learn what happened when they chose to betray Michael Woods and Dr. Allison Pearson. They had no idea what was coming. Chapter 7. The Confrontation. The Drake Hotel's elegant lobby buzzed with its usual mixture of business travelers and wealthy tourists. Michael positioned himself behind a marble pillar with a clear view of the elevators, wearing dark glasses and a baseball cap to avoid recognition. Dean Klein's surveillance team was scattered throughout the area, one reading a newspaper by the concierge desk, another checking in at the reception counter, a third nursing coffee in the adjacent bar. At 1:47 p.m., Carla's silver Mercedes pulled up to the valet station. Michael watched his wife emerge, wearing a black dress he'd never seen before and carrying an overnight bag that made his jaw clench. She moved through the lobby with confident purpose, clearly familiar with the route to the elevators. Brett Pearson arrived 7 minutes later in his silver Porsche, following the same routine. He checked in under the name B. Patterson, close enough to his real name to avoid confusion, but different enough to provide plausible deniability if questioned. The desk clerk handed him a key card without requiring identification, suggesting this was an established arrangement. Michael's earpiece crackled with Klein's voice. Both subjects are in the elevator, heading to the 8th floor. Team 2 is in position in the service corridor. Phase 1 was proceeding perfectly. Now came the delicate timing required for Phase 2. At 2:15 p.m., Dr. Allison Pearson entered the hotel lobby. She looked stunning in a tailored business suit, her professional confidence commanding attention from both male and female observers. She approached the concierge desk and spoke loud enough for nearby guests to overhear. "I'm meeting my husband, Brett Pearson, for drinks. Could you call his room and let him know I'm here?" The concierge's expression shifted from helpful to uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we don't have a guest registered under that name." "That's strange," Allison replied, her voice carrying perfectly to Michael's recording device. He specifically told me to meet him here at 2:30. Room 847, he said. Michael watched the concierge's face change as he realized he was being placed in an impossible position. The hotel's registration system would show B. Patterson in room 847, but policy prevented him from revealing guest information. Perhaps there's been a miscommunication, the concierge suggested diplomatically. Perhaps there has, Allison agreed, her tone sharpening. Would it be possible for you to call room 847 and ask if Mr. Patterson is expecting Dr. Allison Pearson? The concierge reluctantly made the call. Michael could see him speaking in hushed tones, then waiting for a response. When he hung up, his expression was that of a man who'd rather be anywhere else. The guest in room 847 says he's not expecting anyone and requests not to be disturbed. Allison's composure cracked slightly, just enough to appear genuine rather than theatrical. I see. Well, that's illuminating. She turned away from the desk, pulling out her phone and dialing a number. Michael could hear her end of the conversation clearly. Brett, it's Allison. I'm in the lobby of the Drake Hotel looking for you. What do you mean you're the office? You told me to meet you here for drinks. No, I'm quite certain about the location. Room 847, you said. Michael watched other guests in the lobby, turning to observe the unfolding drama. A wife confronting her husband's lies in public was the kind of spectacle that drew attention like a magnet. Brett, I'm standing right here. The concierge confirms that someone in room 847 doesn't want to be disturbed. Are you going to explain this, or should I go up there myself? The phone call ended abruptly. Allison stared at her phone for a moment, then walked deliberately toward the elevators. Michael's heart rate increased. This was the moment of maximum risk. If Brett or Carla realized they were being deliberately exposed, they might find ways to minimize the damage. At 2:28 p.m., the elevator arrived at the 8th floor. Klein's voice crackled through Michael's earpiece. Dr. Pearson is approaching room 847. She's knocking on the door. Michael wished he could witness the confrontation directly, but the hallway cameras would capture everything they needed. He could only imagine the shock on Carla and Brett's faces when Allison's voice penetrated their afternoon of adultery. Team 2 reports, door is opening. Subject Pearson appears to be in a hotel bathrobe. Dr. Pearson is speaking to him, but we can't make out the words from this distance. Michael checked his watch. Right on schedule. In approximately 3 minutes. Carla would have to emerge from the room or remain hidden while her lover's wife confronted him. Either choice would provide devastating evidence. Movement in the hallway, Klein reported. Dr. Pearson is entering the room. Door remains open. This was even better than Michael had hoped. Allison was forcing the confrontation into the open, making it impossible for either adulterer to deny what was happening. 2 minutes later, voices became audible in the hotel lobby as the elevator descended. Michael moved closer to his observation position, ensuring his recording equipment would capture every word. The elevator doors opened, revealing Brett Pearson in hastily assembled clothes, followed by Dr. Allison Pearson with her professional composure intact, and finally Carla in her black dress looking disheveled and panicked. This is ridiculous, Allison, Brett was saying as they crossed the lobby. You're making a scene over a perfectly innocent business meeting. Business meeting? Allison's voice carried across the marble space. Is that what you call it when you check into hotel rooms under false names with married women? Heads turned throughout the lobby. The concierge looked mortified. The valet staff paused their activities to observe the unfolding drama. Carla spoke for the first time, her voice shaky. Dr. Pearson, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. Allison cut her off. I know exactly what you are and exactly what this is. The question is whether your husband knows. Michael felt a surge of admiration for Allison's performance. She was dismantling both adulterers with surgical precision while maintaining the moral high ground. My husband is aware of my foundation work, Carla replied, trying to regain composure. Brett's organization has been very supportive of community arts programs. I'm sure they have, Allison said dryly. though I doubt the foundation board approved funding for hotel rooms and overnight bags. Brett stepped forward, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Allison, you're being irrational. I won't tolerate this kind of public humiliation. You won't tolerate it? Allison's voice rose slightly. Brett, you've been systematically lying to me for months, using our children as cover for your affairs, and stealing from your own foundation to pay for hotel rooms. What exactly do you think you're in a position to not tolerate? The lobby had gone completely silent, except for Allison's voice echoing off the marble surfaces. Michael counted at least 20 witnesses, including hotel staff who would remember this confrontation for years. Carla looked around desperately, finally spotting Michael behind his pillar. Her face went pale as she realized the scope of what was happening. Michael, her voice was barely a whisper. What are you doing here? Michael stepped into view, removing his sunglasses and cap. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority that had dominated countless boardrooms. I'm documenting the destruction of our marriage, Carla. 15 years of vows, 3 months of lies, and approximately $23,000 in theft from our joint accounts. The precision of his numbers hit like physical blows. Carla stumbled backward, her face cycling through shock, fear, and desperate calculation. Michael, I can explain. No need, Michael replied calmly. I have photographs, financial records, witness statements, and now this public admission of your affair. The explanation is quite clear. Brett attempted to regain control of the situation. This is harassment. I'm calling hotel security. Please do, Allison encouraged. I'm sure they'd be interested to learn about your use of false identities and your foundation's questionable expense practices. Michael watched both adulterers realize simultaneously that they were trapped. No escape route, no plausible denials, no way to minimize the damage. They had been outmaneuvered completely. The divorce papers will be filed Monday morning, Michael informed Carla. You'll also be hearing from the district attorney regarding the embezzlement charges. Dr. Pearson, I believe you mentioned involving the foundation board. Monday morning as well, Allison confirmed, along with the IRS, the Illinois Attorney General's office, and the ethics committee at Northwestern Memorial. Carla's legs gave out, and she sank into a nearby chair. The reality of her situation was finally penetrating. Professional ruin, criminal charges, social ostracism, and the loss of everything she'd built over 15 years of marriage. Sydney, she whispered. What about Sydney? Michael's expression hardened. You should have thought about Sydney before you brought him along to witness your betrayal. He knows exactly what you are, Carla. The only question is whether he'll forgive you eventually. And my children? Brett demanded, turning to Allison. We'll learn that actions have consequences, Allison replied. An important lesson their father apparently never mastered. Michael surveyed the scene with grim satisfaction. 2 lives destroyed, 2 marriages ended, multiple careers ruined. The price of betrayal had been paid in full. Enjoy your new life together, he told the defeated couple. You've certainly earned it. As Michael walked away from the wreckage of his marriage, he felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The war was over. Justice had been served. Now he could focus on building a better life for Sydney and himself. The truth had set him free. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. The aftermath unfolded with the systematic precision of a controlled demolition. By Monday morning, Michael's attorneys had filed divorce papers citing adultery, abandonment, and conversion of marital assets. The criminal complaint regarding Carla's embezzlement was submitted to the Cook County District Attorney's Office within hours. Dr. Allison Pearson's coordination with the Foundation Board proved devastatingly effective. Board Chairman Douglas Fry called an emergency meeting for Tuesday morning after reviewing the evidence package Allison had prepared. Photographic documentation of Brett's hotel meetings, financial records showing misuse of foundation funds, and witness statement from the Drake Hotel confrontation painted an irrefutable picture of systematic deception. Michael sat in his home office, reviewing updates from Dean Klein while Sydney practiced piano in the living room. The melody of Bach's Invention No. 1 filtered through the house, a soundtrack of normalcy against the backdrop of strategic destruction. Subject Pearson has been terminated from all foundation positions, Klein reported via encrypted message. The board voted unanimously to remove him and is considering pursuing criminal charges for embezzlement. His real estate firm received copies of the evidence package this morning. Michael smiled grimly. Brett's professional destruction was proceeding exactly as planned. Without his foundation work to provide credibility and his established business relationships crumbling under scandal, Pearson would struggle to maintain his lifestyle or social position. A follow-up message detailed Carla's situation. Subject Woods has been removed from all community arts board positions. 3 upcoming exhibitions featuring her work have been canceled. The Lakeshore Gallery is considering legal action to recover advance payments for work that may now be considered controversial. The art community's reaction had been swift and unforgiving. Carla's carefully cultivated image as a devoted wife and mother was central to her artistic credibility. Without that foundation, her career was collapsing as quickly as her marriage. Sidney finished his piano practice and wandered into the office, settling into the leather chair across from Michael's desk. At 9 years old, he possessed an unsettling ability to read adult moods and situations. "Dad, Mom called my school today," Sidney said without preamble. "She wanted to pick me up early again." Michael's attention sharpened. "What did you tell them?" "I told Mrs. Fleming that I only wanted to go home with you. She said that was okay because you're my primary guardian now." Michael had filed for emergency custody as part of the divorce proceedings, citing Carla's pattern of involving Sidney in her adultery and the emotional trauma he'd experienced. The court had granted temporary custody pending a full hearing. "How do you feel about that?" Michael asked carefully. Sidney was quiet for a moment, his young face serious. "I'm sad that Mom made bad choices, but I'm glad you're protecting me from having to see things I shouldn't see." The maturity of his response was heartbreaking. No 9-year-old should have to navigate adult betrayal and moral complexity. But Sidney was handling the situation with remarkable resilience. "Do you want to talk about anything you saw or heard that day?" Michael offered. "The man in Mom's car kept looking at his watch," Sidney said thoughtfully, like he was worried about something. "And Mom kept touching his arm when she talked to him. It made me feel weird inside." "That feeling was your instincts telling you something was wrong," Michael explained. "It's important to trust those feelings." "Is that why you got angry?" "Because your instincts told you Mom was lying." Michael marveled at his son's ability to connect emotional dots. "Exactly. Sometimes adults think they're being clever, but children see more than they realize." Sidney nodded sagely. "Mrs. Chun says chess teaches you to see patterns other people miss. Maybe real life is like chess too." "How so?" "Like, Mom and that man thought they were winning because they were keeping secrets. But really, you were setting up a trap they couldn't see." Michael felt a surge of pride in his son's analytical thinking. "What made you realize that?" "You got really calm when Mom started lying more. Like you do when you're about to win a chess game. You weren't upset anymore. You were planning." The observation was disturbingly accurate. Michael had indeed shifted from emotional reaction to strategic planning once he decided to destroy both adulterers completely. "Sidney, I need you to understand something important," Michael said seriously. "What I did to your mother and Mr. Pearson was necessary to protect our family. But it's not something I enjoyed. Sometimes being strong means doing difficult things for the right reasons." "I understand," Sidney replied. "Like when you have to take medicine that tastes bad to get better." Exactly like that. They were interrupted by Michael's phone ringing. Dr. Allison Pearson's name appeared on the screen. "Dr. Pearson," Michael answered formally. "The Foundation Board meeting is over," Allison reported. "Brett has been terminated effective immediately. They're also pursuing criminal charges and civil recovery of misappropriated funds." "How much exposure are we talking about?" "Approximately $180,000 in questionable expenses over the past 2 years. The IRS is opening a formal investigation." Michael whistled low. Federal tax fraud carried serious penalties, potentially including prison time. Brett's destruction was more complete than Michael had originally planned. "What about your personal situation?" Michael asked. "Divorce papers filed this morning. Emergency custody granted for the children. Brett is currently staying at his brother's house because I changed the locks. Allison's efficiency was impressive. She dismantled her marriage with the same precision she applied to surgery. Any regrets? Michael asked. None. My children asked why Daddy was in trouble, and I told them he'd been dishonest about important things. They seem relieved to understand why our family has been so tense lately. Children always knew when their parents were living lies. The relief in Allison's voice suggested her kids were experiencing the same peace Sydney had found in finally understanding the truth. Allison, I want you to know, working with you made this possible. I couldn't have achieved this level of justice alone. It was necessary, she replied simply. They thought they could destroy our families without consequences. They were wrong. After ending the call, Michael returned his attention to Sydney, who had been listening with the intense focus he applied to chess problems. Dad, is Dr. Pearson okay? She's strong like you. Sometimes when bad things happen, strong people help each other fix the problems. Are you and Dr. Pearson going to be friends now? Michael considered the question carefully. We helped each other through a difficult situation, but now we both need to focus on rebuilding our own families. Sydney nodded, understanding the distinction. Like teammates who work together for one game, but play for different teams usually. That's a perfect analogy. Michael's laptop chimed with an incoming email from Dean Klein. The subject line read, Final Report, Operation Justice. Klein's summary was comprehensive and satisfying. Both targets had been professionally destroyed, financially compromised, and socially ostracized. Criminal investigations were proceeding against both Brett and Carla. The affair had been exposed so thoroughly that rebuilding their reputations would be impossible. Most importantly, both Michael and Allison had maintained the moral high ground throughout the process. They'd simply revealed the truth about their spouse's behavior and allowed natural consequences to unfold. The beauty of this operation, Klein noted in his summary, is that you didn't destroy them. You simply removed the lies that were protecting them from the consequences of their own choices. Michael saved the report and closed his laptop. The war was officially over. Now came a more challenging task of building a better life for Sydney and himself. Dad, Sydney's voice interrupted his thoughts. When people betray you, do you ever forgive them? The question cut to the heart of everything that had happened. Michael chose his words carefully. Forgiveness is complicated, buddy. Some people make mistakes and genuinely regret them. Those people deserve second chances. But some people make calculated choices to hurt others, and they only regret getting caught. Which kind was Mom? Michael looked at his son's earnest face, seeing intelligence and strength that would serve him well throughout life. Your mother made choices over several months. She had many opportunities to stop and do the right thing. Instead, she continued lying and stealing and involving you in her deception. So she's the second kind. I'm afraid so. Sydney was quiet for several minutes, processing this harsh reality. When he spoke again, his voice was steady. Then I don't think I want to forgive her either. Not now, anyway. Michael felt his heart break for his son's lost innocence, but also pride in Sydney's clear moral reasoning. At 9 years old, he understood concepts of loyalty and consequence that many adults struggled with. That's your choice to make, Michael said gently. And you don't have to decide forever right now. People can change, and feelings can change too. But you won't take her back. Never, Michael replied with absolute certainty. Some lines, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. Sydney nodded, apparently satisfied with this answer. They sat together in comfortable silence as the evening light faded outside Michael's office windows. The phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed Carla's number. Michael declined the call without hesitation. Whatever she wanted to say, apologies, explanations, desperate attempts at reconciliation, he had no interest in hearing. Carla Woods had made her choices. Now she would live with the consequences. Justice had been served. The future belonged to the strong. Chapter 9, New Beginnings. 6 months later, Michael stood in the audience of the Illinois State Chess Championship, watching Sydney analyze his position in the final game. His son had exceeded every expectation, advancing through tournament after tournament with the methodical precision of a seasoned strategist. The boy across from Sydney was older and more experienced, but Michael could see the confidence in his son's posture. Sydney was thinking 5 moves ahead, seeing patterns his opponent couldn't recognize, patient in his execution of a winning strategy. "He's got this," whispered Tom Sellers, another parent whose son had been eliminated in the semifinals. "Sydney plays like a computer. No emotional mistakes, just pure logic." Michael nodded, pride swelling in his chest. The past 6 months had transformed both father and son. Sydney had channeled his experience with adult betrayal into an understanding of human nature that served him well in competitive chess. He could read opponents' psychological tells, exploit their impatience, and maintain composure under pressure. "Checkmate," Sydney announced quietly, moving his queen into position for the final blow. The tournament hall erupted in applause as Sydney became the youngest player ever to win the Illinois State Championship in his division. Michael pushed through the crowd to embrace his son, both of them grinning with the joy of hard-earned victory. "I'm proud of you, champ," Michael said, lifting Sydney off his feet in a bear hug. "I used the Queen's Gambit opening you taught me," Sydney beamed. "Sacrificed a pawn early to control the center, just like we practiced." Later, as they celebrated with ice cream at Sydney's favorite restaurant, Michael reflected on how much their lives had improved since the destruction of his marriage to Carla. The initial trauma had been difficult, but the clarity that followed had been liberating. "Dad, can I ask you something?" Sydney said, pausing with his spoon halfway to his mouth. "Always. Do you think Mom watches my chess games online?" The question caught Michael off guard. Sydney's tournaments were sometimes live-streamed, and it was possible Carla followed his progress from whatever life she'd built after a spectacular fall from grace. "Would it matter to you if she did?" Michael asked carefully. Sydney considered this seriously. "I think it would make me sad. Not because I miss her, but because she gave up the right to be proud of me." The maturity of his response was stunning. At 9 years old, Sydney had developed a moral framework that many adults lacked. He understood consequences, loyalty, and the difference between love and enabling destructive behavior. "That's a very wise way to think about it," Michael said. "I learned it from watching you," Sydney replied matter-of-factly. "You taught me that loving someone doesn't mean accepting their bad choices." Michael's phone buzzed with a text message from Dr. Allison Pearson. Saw Sydney's championship on the news. "Congratulations to both of you." Over the past months, Michael and Allison had maintained minimal contact, brief updates on legal proceedings, coordination on school events since their children attended the same chess club, professional courtesy between former allies. Their marriage-ending partnership had achieved its goals, but both understood the importance of rebuilding separately. "Dr. Pearson says congratulations," Michael told Sydney. "How are her kids doing?" "Very well from what I hear. Sometimes difficult experiences make families stronger when they're handled properly." Sydney nodded, understanding the reference to their own situation. The trauma of Carla's betrayal had ultimately brought father and son closer together, creating a bond based on mutual respect rather than simple biology. Michael's phone rang as they drove home. Dean Klein's name appeared on the screen. "Michael, I have an update on the Pearson situation you might find interesting." "Go ahead." Brett Pearson was sentenced this afternoon. 18 months federal prison for tax fraud and embezzlement. He'll also owe $340,000 in restitution to the foundation. Michael felt a grim satisfaction. The legal system had functioned exactly as designed, punishing financial crimes with appropriate severity. Brett's destruction was now complete and official. What about Carla's situation? Plea bargain accepted. 6 months home confinement, 2 years probation, and full restitution of the stolen marital assets. She'll also have to complete community service and financial counseling. The sentence seemed light compared to Brett's, but Michael understood the practical considerations. Carla was a first-time offender with a minor child, factors that typically resulted in reduced penalties. Any word on her living situation? She's renting a studio apartment in Wicker Park, working part-time at a community college teaching basic art classes. Very different lifestyle from what she's accustomed to. Michael felt no sympathy for her reduced circumstances. Carla had chosen to destroy their family for the excitement of an affair with a serial adulterer. She was experiencing exactly the life she'd earned through her choices. After ending the call, Michael glanced at Sydney in the rearview mirror. His son was studying chess notation in a tournament program, already analyzing games for improvement opportunities. Sydney, do you ever wonder what your life would be like if Mom hadn't made those bad choices? Sydney looked up from his program. Sometimes, but then I think about how strong we are now and how much we trust each other, and I think maybe this is better. Better how? Before, I was always worried about things I couldn't understand. Now I know you'll always tell me the truth, even when it's hard. That feels safer. Michael felt his throat tighten with emotion. His son had learned lessons about trust and integrity that would serve him throughout life. The price had been high, but the foundation they'd built together was unshakable. As they pulled into their driveway, Michael made a decision that had been forming for weeks. How would you feel about moving somewhere new? He asked. Maybe Colorado or North Carolina. Someplace where we could have a fresh start. Sydney's eyes lit up with excitement. Really? Like a total adventure. Like a total adventure. New house, new schools, new chess clubs to dominate. Can we get a dog? Michael laughed, the first genuinely carefree sound he'd made in over a year. We can definitely get a dog. That evening, as Sydney worked on homework at the kitchen table and Michael researched relocation options, they settled into the comfortable rhythm of their new life. No tension, no lies, no walking on eggshells around someone whose loyalties were divided. Michael's laptop chimed with an email from an executive recruiting firm in Denver. A boutique M&A consultancy was seeking someone with his experience and reputation. The offer was substantial, the location perfect for outdoor activities Sydney would love, and the opportunity to build something new from scratch was appealing. Dad, look at this chess problem, Sydney called from the table. Michael closed the laptop and moved to examine the position Sydney was analyzing. It was a complex endgame scenario requiring precise calculation and strategic patience. What do you think? Sydney asked. Michael studied the board, seeing the solution emerge from the apparent chaos. Queen's sacrifice on the 7th rank. Forces the king into the corner for mate in 6 moves. That's exactly what I thought, Sydney exclaimed. Sometimes the most dramatic move is also the right move. As Michael helped his son work through the tactical sequence, he reflected on the parallels to their real-life situation. The destruction of his marriage had felt dramatic and brutal, but it had ultimately led to a stronger, more honest relationship with Sydney. Some sacrifices were worth making when they led to decisive victory. Later, after Sydney had gone to bed, Michael sat in his office drafting a response to the Denver opportunity. A new city, a new career challenge, and a chance to build something better with his son. The future stretched ahead of them, full of possibilities that hadn't existed when he was trapped in a dying marriage built on lies. His phone buzzed with one final message of the day. An unknown number saw the chess championship. Sydney looked happy. I hope you both find peace. Michael stared at the message for several seconds, recognizing Carla's writing style, despite the unfamiliar number. She was reaching out from whatever diminished life she'd built, perhaps seeking forgiveness or reconciliation. He deleted the message without responding.